I welcome you to our third session. By now, I hope that you already have a business idea that you have developed and that you already have been able to work through the workbook, and you've been able to do the exercises that are in the workbook up to page number, including especially page number 25, and you already now have your plan. You now have considered what are your setup costs will be that you'll be able to need to be able to set up this particular business. So from now on, in the third session, we're going to look at making your figures add up. We're going to try and make sure that we help you to be able to know what costs you need to consider and whether your business is likely to make you money. It is important because most businesses are set up with an aim of making profits. So today's lesson will be quite critical in ensuring that you understand what things you need to look out. And if we say profit, what do we mean? If we say costs, what do we mean? So that's the intention of this class. So I ask you to sit in and watch, and I request you to make sure that you have your head geared up. Most people don't like to talk about mathematics. If you start talking about mathematics, people start getting scared with numbers. You know, when I was growing up, we learned to count using sticks. So you could put a band of 10 sticks, and that's what mathematics to us. Then you take out 2, you know you're remaining with 8. But in business, you can't. We deal with figures every day. How many people have I served? How much were they paying each? You need to be able to know which figures to deal with in. And as we start this third session, that's where we need to look at. Now, when you look through the workbook, like we mentioned, you see that there is a sequence of exercises that you keep coming across. And it's this sequence of exercises that then introduce us to the subject of business finance. Now, the word finance is sometimes troublesome in many languages. If you try to get it especially in local African Bantu languages, you get into trouble because it doesn't have a direct equivalent. But we know it is important to understand, because finance is the money, the different kinds of money that you are using in your business. There will be money that is not entirely yours. There will be money that is coming in from suppliers. That's a different word. Suppliers are those people that give you goods that you use. And there will be those that we call debtors. Debtors are those things that people you have given credit to. And there will be those that demand money from you, and those are called creditors. So all these ones, the way they interplay, and you also put in your money, so there will also be shareholders' money. So the interplay of these different kinds of money is what is called finance. So you have to be aware which kind of money I'm using, and then you know where you can be able to handle your money, how to handle your money. So in the workbook, we use numbers, so we'll be using numbers to try and follow up these subjects. Allow me also to introduce some of the other subjects. I'm just doing some definitions here. And the other definition, it comes in from looking at, if you look at costs, they have to be broken down. You would find that you have fixed and variable costs. And then you also find that you also have startup costs, and instead of which are including operating costs. So we'll be able to learn all these ones, but I encourage you to be able to follow up as we go down. Now, we're going to start by knowing that business, if we go back to our diagram that says how business works, we see that when you buy, you go and buy materials to replace those that you have already used up in your business, but it will cost you money. You have to pay. Now, for the case of the guitar maker's business, if you look closely here, you see he's paying $3, $3. That's 3 coins. That's what he took there. But when you look down, he also has material tools that he uses to be able to produce the guitar. And these are 2 tools. So if you add the 2 coins and you add them to the 3 coins, you probably know you have 5 coins. So these 5 coins now, if you go down and you look at, we and our staff receive wages for our work. When you pay yourself or when you pay your workers, assuming that you have taken their 2 coins, so here it starts now, you start to see that you have already spent 7 coins. Now, if you go to the bank and take 1 coin, you will see that, yes, that coin may be available later, but you've saved a coin. But if you go and then you look at the loop where you sell your guitar, you sell your goods and services, then you know that you have to get paid. And if they pay you, you look here and you see that you've been paid 8 coins. So if you look at the 8 coins, that's the money that you had in coming in. If you take out three coins, and you take out 2 coins, and you take out another 2 coins, you end up seeing that this equation actually balances. You received 8 coins, and then you spent 7 coins and saved 1 coin. So that's mathematics in business. If you have a business, there is only one loop that brings you money. This loop is where you sell your goods or your services, and that's where you get some money that comes in and that allows you to be able to pay for the others. But this diagram is simplistic in nature, assuming that you only produce 1 guitar, you sell it in a day, you all pay all your workers in a single day, and all your tools and equipment, nothing breaks, nothing goes wrong. So it's being simplistic. But for you to allow you have to understand that in the actual business world, you buy timber that will stay overnight. So you will have carry over goods that you need to be able. And then you supply goods to your customer when he may not be able to pay on time. So you start realizing that things don't necessarily move in a straight line. So for us to appreciate business finance, we have another diagram here that really puts this into perspective. Now, the element of business finance is about knowing what your income is. You have to know how much money has come into the business and how much money am I going to be able to spend. So this diagram, you see that it's a hill, or it's a collection of coins or dollars. So the more income that comes into your business, the better. So you see, we have income. Normally income comes in from our customers. When we sell goods, they pay us, we have money. But we also have expenditure. We have expenditure, or called costs. Expenditure and costs mean the same thing, and this includes fixed and variable cost. And you see that some of these we'll be able to get into this in a little bit detail. They are that expenditure that doesn't change with the changes in your units produced, and that is called fixed cost. As you see, it's a little bit darker, and there is what they call variable cost remaining over. But when you have something remaining after you have taken your income and then you have subtracted your costs, you may have a profit. You may have a profit if you have something. So you have some left over. This is the money left over after the costs are taken from the income. But in any case, that if you find that you actually don't have enough revenue to cover your costs, you end up with another word, and it will be called loss. So that's the introduction of what constitutes elements of business finance. Now, in our workbook, we're going to try and show you how this is done using the workbook, and introduce these subjects a little bit further. So may I direct you, if you have your workbook, take time, be able to pick up and pick your workbook and go straight to page number 23. I mean page number 33, and then you can be able to start looking at exactly what we need to be able to do to understand this. Now, as we've seen in our diagram before, if you look at page number 33, you've seen in the diagram that we had a guitar maker. Now let's just substitute that to be a bed, and let's assume that the carpenter is making beds. We would take it for granted that most of us, at least anyway, can afford to be able to sleep on a bed, or different kinds of beds. But all of them, they are carpenters that have made them, and they are carpenters that are able to make some money by making those beds and earn a livelihood. So what we do, we start and say, you go to exercise number 23 in the workbook, and you could be able to follow. You see that there is a letter called U, and this letter is an illustration. It tells you what your basic unit is. It says basic unit is. You read that word, basic unit of sale. So that's what you have to put there. Now, when you are selling goods or services, there is something that you sell. In my cleaning business, I sell cleaning of chairs. So I sell one set of chairs, set cleaning of chairs. But the carpenter will be able to sell one set of, or one bed. So that unit that you're selling, that helps you to be able to know where you'll be able to apportion the costs and where your revenue will be coming from. Are you selling shirts, a kilogram of beans, a sack of beans? So what are you selling? So you need to know. And once you identify that, that is your unit of sale. So in this case, let's say our unit of sale is one bed. We've said our unit of sale is one bed. Now down there, you have another letter that then demands you to identify what is called selling price. Now, selling price is the amount of money you charge 1 unit of sale. The amount of money that you need to be able to charge 1 unit of sale. It's important to know how much you would charge. Now, you have to take time off and be able to calculate how much are they. For now, for this class, you could take the example, how much are your colleagues charging? But you need to be able to calculate and incorporate all the costs in your selling price. Because if you don't determine the selling price right, you're going to end up in trouble. You end up in a situation where you cannot be able to make money simply because your selling price is too low. Or you may end up losing customers because your selling price is too high. They cannot afford to be able to buy it. Now, so the selling price of one bed, in most cases, we're going to assume that if you're buying beds, the selling price is $25. Let's say the selling price is $25. Here you could get a decent bed that maybe could work a couple of years. And then you also have to find out there's something else called quantity of sale. Say quantity of sale. How many units do you expect to sell in a particular period? Most people would want to look at this maybe per, some people look at per day, others look at per week, others look at per month, others can look at per year. But you need to know how many units can I sell. Most people, I would recommend looking at how many units you can be able to sell per month. So you have to find out how many beds can I be able to sell in a month. Now, in this case, you have to know that this exercise helps you to check on page number 21. You had put on something there at page number 21. So you go and follow through and see. So in this case, if you say per month, how many beds can you sell? If you're a good carpenter in a local setting, you probably can be able to sell 5 beds per month. So you can sell 5 beds. Now, once you know the quantity and you know how many each unit costs, you probably are in position to find out your income, as we looked prior to the other diagram. Income, you can be able to find income, which the other word for income is revenue. So in this case, you find that if you get W times Q, you are able to get 25 times 5, and this would equal to $125 for you, and this would be your total income. It will be your total revenue. That's the money that you would expect to come in. If you sold each bed per month and you sold each for $5, you sold 5 beds at $25 each, you could be able to make $125 in a month. Now, the question is this money enough for you to be able to sustain a business? Maybe you need to find ways to sell more beds so that instead of selling 5 beds, you could be able to sell 50 beds. It's important to always find ways to be able to increase the revenue that comes from your business. Now, having identified that, then you have to recognize that for you to make these 5 beds, there will be things that you need to be able to pay for. And these things that you pay for could come in different aspects. There are things that you have to pay for. And then we introduce the element of costs. Now, if you are a carpenter in a local village, you are probably going to be able to rent the space where you're working. You pay rent. You pay some form of power for you to be able to work. You pay for some form of salaries for you and the people that work for you. You pay for wood stroke timber for you to make the beds. You buy some nails and you buy some tools like jack planes, so you pay for these kind of things, and you also pay for transport. You pay for transport, and after that you also may pay a license to allow you to operate, a license to operate from the local government or the local authority. So these are some of the things that you may find that you are paying. Now, what you realize is that these expenses can then be grouped into different kind of expenses. You may find that rent, because of its nature, is a fixed cost. It doesn't change with the units of production in the near term. So this is a fixed cost. And power is both a fixed and a variable cost. If you have your own meter, as in most cases, if you have your own meter, that's okay. If you don't have a meter and somebody just gives you a portion, then it could be a variable. But in most cases, power is a variable cost. And then you have salaries. Salaries by their nature are both variable and fixed. So this could be fixed and variable. It can be fixed if you know how much you're spending every month to pay your employees. They are salaried employees, you pay them at the end of the month. But there are those that we call in people that only earn money when you have sold, when they have carried something. Those are called wages. And they get wages, and the wages are considered variable cost. So we can then go ahead, see if you can go ahead and name all the others. But you can easily find out that this is variable cost. Nails are also a variable cost, they only go. This one is part of your setup costs. Remember setup costs? These are part of your setup costs, the tools. And then transport is a variable cost, and license to operate may be deemed a fixed cost. So that way you know which type of costs that you have. We've just learned that in business you have what is called fixed costs, and you also have variable cost. So for you to be able to get your, when you take these two and add them together, when you add fixed cost plus variable costs, then you end up with total costs. And that's what you get out. So having understood the different kind of costs, you need to be able to identify them. It's always good to know which of these costs you are incurring. But most of the troublesome part comes from when you look at variable cost. You are likely to have more variable cost than you're likely to have with the fixed cost. So, but the variable cost, you have to know how much money am I spending on this particular item? How much money am I spending to produce one bed? So let's assume that for this class and for this video, we're going to assume that rent for our place is but $5. We are paying $5 for rent, and for power we are paying $2. We're paying $2, and our salaries are $30. We're going to assume that we're paying $30 for our salaries, and we are also paying $30 to be able to procure the timber that we are using, and nails are costing us $5 to be able to produce. And then we have tools, the setup costs, which we don't going to include in this one. But then we have transport, where we're also paying $5, and we're looking at the license to operate, which is a year. We're paying this one every year, and it is $20. So that means every month we're paying an average of $2. So if you want to find out how much is total cost and $30, and that's maybe $35, and then you have, then here we get our costs as $35 fixed cost, and then the variable costs would be, we have $2 here, and we will be able to get $30, $32, nails are $5, that's $7, transport is $5, and that's $42. So you are spending $42, and your total costs, if you add the two, you'll find easily that you are spending $77. That's what your total cost would be in a given month. So you know I'm spending $77 to be able to produce 5 beds. We only made materials that were able to produce 5 beds. However, before we start knowing exactly what's happening, is that we have another concept that becomes quite interesting. Is that it's variable cost. When you look at variable cost, if you look at variable costs, you easily find that variable cost can come actually in 2 types. We have what we call the actual variable cost, and you also find that we have the ideal variable cost. You'll find that there is actual variable cost, and you also find that there is ideal variable cost. So by going through this, let me explain here so that you can be able to understand. In a business, most of us assume that things will always be okay. that the rains will come on time, that the business will be always okay, that nothing will go wrong. But when you buy timber, remember you buy it in a raw form. You have to take it you have to take it to the workshop and work on it to make it smooth. Then after you have made it smooth, you have to cut it. So you find that the timber you expected to finish 5 beds actually was not only enough to finish 4 beds and a half. So you bought timber for, as you have seen here previously, that the cost of timber, we bought timber for $30. We bought timber expecting to spend $30. And we hoped that this timber would be enough to produce 5 beds. So the target was 5 beds to produce. But when you go to the workshop and work on the timber, straighten it up, you actually end up knowing that actually you are only able to get 4.5 beds. Now you're going to say, I had expected to finish, but then 1 bed is unfinished. Now what do I do? Your variable costs will actually have to go up. So that means instead of, if you had $30 and you produced 5 beds worth of timber, $30 worth of timber, and you produced 5 beds, each bed you are taking an average of $6 on each bed. But because you have not been able to get 5 beds, then you have to look at using $30 still and then divide it by 4.5. Meaning that if you take this one and you divide it, not only are you going to be able to get an average of, let's say, I'll just round it off to, you'll be able to get $5. You'll be able to get what? $5 for, you'll actually be spending more. It will go up. It will go up. If you look that prior before, if you got the 5 beds, you would be spending $6 on each. But actually by spending, not getting enough wood to cover this, you're actually spending $7. So your costs go up. Now when we look at this, we say this one is then called the ideal variable cost. But then this one is the actual variable cost. And reason being is that when you look at these two, you're actually learning to see that one is the ideal variable cost and the other one is the actual. The actual normally is higher than the ideal. So always don't assume that things will be moving your way. Don't assume that things will always be right. You always have to expect some things that bumps and bumps when you are setting up your own business or when you are learning your own business. Things sometimes will go wrong. But how do you react when they have gone wrong? So that's the situation, understanding both variable and fixed cost. Now, if we went back to our example of beds, you would be able then to recognize that you remember we had sales. So here, the mathematics then becomes simple. We had our income as per the previous calculation was as a result of the income was coming in as a result of selling 5 beds per month at a rate of how much? We sold 5 beds and we were selling them for $25 and we had a total income of $125. If you remember correctly, we were spending a total income, our total expenses. Now, if we go back and look at our chart here that we've been using, we thought that things were all comfortable. We are going to spend $77. But because now we have added another concept of that price may go up, the actual ideal variable cost, the variable cost component will go up. So then since instead of spending variable cost here, we said that our variable cost, if you look closely for wood, actually had increased. It had increased by an extra, so we find that here we have to add another $5 as a result of our costs going up. So here, then this one would be plus 5, meaning that actually we are spending $82. So when we look back, we go up here and look that if we have gotten 80, we have an income of 125, but then our total income, our total costs, as we have calculated, is now actually 82. It is $82. So when you subtract with this, then you'll know that here you're remaining with 3 and here you're remaining with 4, and this would be your profit. This would be the profit that you would expect to get, assuming that everything was moving okay. So this introduces us to another concept called profit. It only appears when you have been able, things have moved okay, and you've been able to make sales and being able to control your costs and know exactly. Most businesses, when we start them, we're looking at profit. We're looking at actually being able to turn a profit on our businesses. No business, I could say, no business would survive in the long run if it's not making a profit, because either you get out or you run out of money to be able to operate it. In our example here, you're lucky, God has been with you and you have been able to deliver a profit. But in certain instances, you could actually get into trouble. You could not be able to get, either because you have not sold enough beds. So the problem here would be if this friend of ours was unable to sell 5 beds in a month and only sold, in the month he sold only 3 beds. It was a bad month and there are not so many people that wanted to buy a bed. There were not so many people that were getting married that required new beds. So in this case, if this particular individual sold only 3 beds, if only 3 beds were sold, and you looked at 3 beds and each was costing us $25, you'll find that he has only $75 coming in. But remember, maybe his expenses will not change. His expenses will not change. So he will still have to spend, his costs would be, as we've seen, they would be $82, but then you'll find that then he has a loss. A loss is a negative. It is negative if you do figures and you find that he would have a loss of, in this case, he would have a loss of $7. He would be making a loss of $7. In mathematics, a loss can be written as a negative, or sometimes it can be written as a bracket 7, meaning that he had a negative of 7. So this is what would be termed a loss. You would be having a loss. And if you continue to have a loss continuously, you probably could not be able to survive in the long run. So what we have to find out then is that I have made some profits, yes, but you need to know, when do you make the profits? When are you able to get enough profits? It's not easy to just say I have made $1 is the only profit that I have. You have to make enough profit. And in most cases, you are borrowing money. You're borrowing money from a microfinance institution or from your friends or your relative. We'll cover that in our first session. But you will see that you need to be able to make enough money to be able to pay off your loan, maybe in 4 months only. So you'll need to be able to make enough money that warrants you be able to live a decent life. I've also looked at setting up businesses that allow me to be able to make a decent living. You could actually, I've also told people that if you go and they send you to get a truck full of sand, you can't carry spoon. You have to carry spade, because if you carry spoon, it will take you a month to finish it, and I wonder if you could actually finish it. So when you're choosing businesses to do, choose a business that allows you to be able to use your energy and resources and say you get. It's about being able to make a decent living, and that's what we define as success. Being able to look after yourself, take your children to school, look after your family. That's what we call success. So in order for you to know how much profits do I need to be able to make, we then introduce a subject that, a simple word that is called break-even point. Now, break-even point is that situation, and the word is, you look at where can I break even? Break-even point is that point where here you look at making, here you are looking at making 0 profit, and you're also making 0 loss. So whichever way you look at, you're looking at making 0 profit and 0 loss. It's not that you have not worked. Don't try to say, if I don't set up the business, I will have 0 profit and I will have 0 loss. No, it's only when you are doing an activity. How many units must you sell to get your business to be able to break even, to make 0 profit and 0 loss? Now, this diagram is a little bit of reflective of what we use it actually in our organization, Living Business Education. We use it as our company logo. Our logo says that if you live down below, if you live down anywhere here, along the lines here, this is what we call the poverty line. You are below in the poverty line. So basically, here you would say this is the poverty. In business, this is the loss angle. So you're living in poverty, or you're actually living in a loss. This is the lower side. But if God willing, you could be able to make some money and be able to get down here. Here you are making less sales. But if you stay on this line, you are not developing. You're not going any further. But if you start here, you could look as profit. And capitalists would say profit equals prosperity. Once you consistently make a profit, you actually are on your way of prospering. Now, I'm not saying you go on your way to becoming rich, but actually you will be on your way to prospering and making. So the break-even point in this scenario would be the place here. This is the place that then you call the break-even point. So if we went back to our friend, the bed maker, the carpenter that makes bed, and we try to find out what is his 0 point. We know from having looked at the expenses that the carpenter is having, our carpenter making beds is has total cost per month. Let's say we stick to 82. That's what he's spending. But then we need to be able to find out how many units must he sell to be able to cover his costs. And we know from experience that a bed costs $25. So when you take this and you divide it by 25, you actually would be able to find out that he has to probably sell 3.5 beds to be able to make money. And so the 3.5 beds is the break-even point, as we have discussed. So that's the point where he knows if he sells 3.5 beds, he will make money. If he sells anything below 3.5 beds, he will be in a loss. If he sells above, he will be making some money. So if I were this carpenter and I lived in this village, I would pray that so many people get married and I can be able to sell 7 beds in a month. Yeah, no one wants to take a bride and takes him to the floor. And in fact, in most African cultures, you're not even allowed to marry if you can't buy a bed. So it's your kingdom. Be able to take care of it. So this is a break-even point, and this shows that from here I would be able to make money, and I can be able to make a profit and pay back the loan that I took to start my business. I can be able to pay. So this marks the end of our third session, and but before we go, I would want to go back and try to teach you something concerning, because sometimes we learn profitable businesses that give us business. And as you saw in our second session, we talked about the story of Samuel. And Samuel had a business on page number 10. You see, if you go back and read it again, I want you to appreciate it. But if you read it back, you see that Samuel was making good money. He was making a lot of profits. But what problem that happened to him was a result of his having a very extended family that depended on him, and he wasn't able to control the way he was spending money. So in most African setting, we have come to develop something we have termed as the poverty bucket. And now this is a diagram that I want you to watch closely as I draw it here, that it looks like this if you look at it. So in most cases and in most African society, there will be some people that by nature God has given the grace, they have worked hard and they are out of poverty. Some of these can be able to buy brand new cars, although most of us drive used cars. So the people it's not that they are corrupt per se, it's not that they are government employees, but it's because some of these have worked harder to get where they are. Now, being a business training class, we now want to know that, but there are many people that are down here. They're still stuck in poverty, and these are the people that this training video is trying to help, that there are so many people that are stuck here. And as I'm hoping and I'm writing this, I'm hoping that you can start your way of getting out of poverty. Now, most people arguably would want to have somebody from here throwing a rope to help them. Now, if assuming that you are the one that is throwing the rope to try to help somebody, the trouble is that when you try to help people here, many of them will turn up and they'll keep getting on top of here. So instead of you helping one person, you end up seeing that you have so many people. As we came to record this video today, I read in the paper of somebody who wanted to help children He started by looking after 5. As we speak now, he has now 52 in his home. He said, I cannot take it anymore. I can no longer be able to take in anybody. So the point is that when you get here, he now recognizes he's getting into trouble and he has to depend on donations. But if you're not careful, you end up moving from here and getting here, down here. So the result is that you actually get back into poverty if you think you can help everybody. But be careful. Helping is okay, but only carry those that you can't be able to carry. However, if you know you found yourself in a deep hole, the English say if you find yourself in a deep hole, you stop digging. So, but in this case, if you find yourself in a deep hole, start climbing up. If you are in a deep hole of poverty, start climbing up. So you start getting somewhere here, and by working hard, you are on your way out of poverty. You've started a business and it's now prospering. But somewhere, somehow, somebody comes to you and says, oh, please. And here in most African societies, they will give you a big man's name. In Swahili, they will call you Muzei. And in other languages, they will call you Kapo. Whatever language they are using, they will try to tell you you are chief if you are coming from Nigeria. So they try to give you a name that tries to tell you you have arrived. But you know you are not yet in a position to help others. But if you could wait a little bit longer. You could be able to get into a position to help others. But if you make a mistake when you are here and you throw a rope trying to help somebody, obviously you know what would happen. You actually end up down here in the valley too and back to zero. So then you find in a family, no one is getting up. Everyone that starts getting up, they sit on his back. Everyone I know from experience that this thing can happen. I come from an average, a big African family, but I had the ability. I discussed this with my parents, and we discussed that I can only look after 4 other 9 that need to be taken care of. So you need to be able to pick a portion that you can't be able to take. It's not that everyone you can take, or you can't always go back to your village to bury everyone, all uncles and everybody. I'm not saying this here anti-social African settings, but the thing is that don't let this one, the poverty bucket, pull you back into always think about this when you're helping. Help responsibly. What I've learned is that when you go out and you are working and you help people responsibly, you improve your chances of helping so many other people. You improve your chances of helping others in the future. But in the short term, you could actually be able to get into trouble. So I'm going to request that you go back into the workbook and do all the exercises in the workbook up to page number 40. Do all the exercises before you proceed to session number 4, which happens to be our last session, and do all the exercises that are required for you to be able to process and know the numbers and the cost and see if you can make a profit. May I stress further that the intention here is that you wait until you have done the business, but you can do the numbers and see if the business that you are setting up is likely to be profitable, is likely to make you some money. And so, but then we'll see you in our session number 4.